fatally compromised.
We do need contingency plans just in case something does get through. We think something will get through, and therefore we want to know what it is that the government is doing in the event that this happens.
The military has built its own cyber operations centre here at Corsham to protect its networks. But the committee says more could be done to work out when a cyber attack might require a military response and how to integrate cyber operations into wider military thinking. The Ministry of Defence today said it did have contingency plans in place but could not discuss them in detail for reasons of national security.
We need to make sure that our systems are robust enough to cope with any attack that there may be. But I take great heart from the fact that the UK is ranked #1 in its preparedness to face down those sorts of potential threats, but there's no complacency.
The threats from cyberspace are evolving at breakneck speed, and today's report is a warning that the military, as with many other organisations, will need to adapt fast. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
Now, if you've ever wondered why your fingers go wrinkly when you've been sitting in the bath or doing the washing up, then scientists at Newcastle University may have found the answer.
Yes, they believe that those prune-like fingers were actually to help our ancestors handle food in wet vegetation, because wet objects are easier to grasp if you've got wrinkled pads to your fingers than if they're all smooth.
Yes, that's the idea.
There we go, just makes me want to do that for some reason. There we go. 10 minutes past 7. The things you learn working on this programme.
10 minutes past 7. We're going to take you back to our main story now, the overhaul of the probation service in England and Wales, which will allow private companies and charities to take responsibility for monitoring offenders.
Under the new plans, prisoners serving short sentences would be supervised on their release for the first time. And the management of low and medium risk offenders would be taken over by charities, private companies, and they'd be paid on results according to whether they did or didn't reoffend. So let's talk about this with former offender Eric Allison, who is now The Guardian's prison correspondent. Very good morning to you. It's going to cut back the work that the probation service does. You have had a lot of experience of working with the probation service. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we knew that the private sector was going to play a part in the so-called rehabilitation revolution, but this appears to be en masse. It would seem that the private sector are going to take over the management of low and medium risk people in the community, serving community sentences. Well, these people, or this grouping, may be low risk, but they present with a highly complex series of problems and needs, drug and alcohol problems, homelessness, and increasingly mental health issues.
Couldn't those issues be dealt with by experts within the private sector and within charities just as well?
Well, they've no experience of it, and the probation service, for all its faults, it does have experience in it, and it just seems that to jettison all this experience in one go, it just seems slightly odd to me.
Charities, depending on the charity, charities getting involved surely have had lots of experience of dealing with people with that sort of background.
Well, yes, but they're overseen by the private sector, and one of my fears about this is that it could turn out to be a tagging charter, because there's a crime and courts bill going through Parliament at the moment, and one of the clauses, it compels courts to, if they're handing down a community sentence, to include at least one punitive element. Well, there's only two punitive elements, and that's unpaid work and tagging. And who operates the tagging system in this country but Serco, who apparently are going to oversee this show. So I fear that we could see thousands of people, walking around with these electronic bracelets, which have been shown by a government survey not to reduce crime. But I think that's the way we may be going.
What about the fact that there's going to be a big motivating factor for this private sector, that they will be paid by results? If the probation service doesn't stop you reoffending, I'm not sure what the penalty would be, but under this system, there would be a penalty. They simply wouldn't get paid if those criminals that they're managing, these private companies, do reoffend.
Well, how will they judge the results? Is it that people don't reoffend within a certain period of time, because that's how they judge them now, And really the best way of ensuring that people don't reoffend is to find them a job, and I'm a bit concerned about where they're going to find them a job, because we are talking a lot of people here.
Let's put those points then to the Justice Minister. Eric, thanks very much indeed.
Justice Minister Lord McNally joining us from Westminster. Lord McNally, thanks very much for joining us this morning. I don't know if you heard Eric there saying he's worried that this will turn into a tagging charter, that it will end up in effect with ex-offenders, thousands of them, just being forced to wear tags, and that won't necessarily reduce crime.
Certainly won't automatically reduce crime. Tagging is one factor in this, but I'm rather disappointed, and I hope where Eric reads the document and indeed when the probation service looks at this, they will see this as a real opportunity rather than produce instant knee-jerk reactions. I mean, I do think that for the first time we are tackling a real problem in terms of reoffending.
Yeah.
Half the people that go through our prisons reoffend.
Yeah.
For first time, for under a year sentences, 76% of them reoffending.
Yeah,
That's an enormous waste of taxpayers' money.
Yeah, there's clearly a problem. It's just questions to whether this is the right solution. There's been a pilot. Well, there's been a pilot of the programme at Peterborough Prison. No figures from that yet, so we don't know. And the government's already tried out payment by results in the work programme. There's no statistical evidence that it does actually work.
Neither is the statistical evidence that it doesn't work. The big problem that I've found in 2.5 years in government is that every time you come up with an initiative, you will roll out the naysayers who say, oh, we shouldn't do this, let's stay with it what we are. We've got a problem. We're keeping people in prison, keeping people under probation supervision costs the taxpayer £4 billion. When people say, how are you going to pay for this? That's quite a big chunk of public money.
So is this just about saving money then?
No, of course it's not about saving money. It's about making sure that we don't have the revolving door of people reoffending. It's one of the big revolutions, and I do hope that some of those who are interested in the criminal justice system look at this as the opportunity it is. For the first time, we're going to look at giving practical help to the 76,000 people who are sentenced to under a year in prison, who are then released with no supervision or help or assistance before. And when they say that about the various problems, I'm well aware that mental health, alcoholism, drug dependency are big factors in criminal offending. And a lot of the expertise in dealing this, as Eric will well know, is in the voluntary sector. And the fact that the private sector will be bringing private sector management into this area, but the opportunities, the companies that come in are bound to use the public sector expertise. Okay. And I see a lot of opportunities for it. And I'd like to see as well the public probation service given the professional respect that it deserves. Right. This is an opportunity for us in dealing with offenders.
Okay. And we'll see if it works. Lord McNally, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Eric, I mean, you know, the Justice Minister points up this extraordinary rate of reoffending and the fact that low-risk offenders or those serving shorter sentences are going to be supervised for the first time now when they come out of custody.
Oh yes, and that's advancing because, you know, and they came up with the idea recently of employing ex-offenders and people who'd come out of prison and faced all the obstacles coming out of prison, you know, to help people and to guide them through the minefield that is, you know, the pathway of coming out of prison. So that's a good idea. And I'm not anti, you know, private sector per se, but it's just the idea of doing it almost overnight en masse and saying, you know, this is now your problem. And it's a massive, massive problem.
Eric, thanks very much.
Thank you.
17 minutes past 7.
At about 10 past 8 this morning, we're going to be speaking to the Chief Inspector of Probation and find out her reaction to those proposals.
Also on the programme this morning, Life of Pi, among the movies which could receive BAFTA nominations today. We'll talk to film critic Mark Comode and get his reaction to the announcements. He's very fond of the Bond movie Skyfall, isn't he?
The top 3 motoring organisations in the UK all reporting increases in the number of call-outs for people with punctures who think they've got one of these, and actually they've got some of this. Find out with me a bit later on.
Ooh, drilling noises. Here's Carol with the weather.
Make you nervous.
Not a dentist in sight, Billy, you're fine. Good morning. It's once again going to be a cloudy start for some of us, but we do have a lot of fog around this morning, particularly so across the north of England. Now we'll see some sunshine. That's behind this weather front, which is currently producing some rain. That will move away. We've had a clearance in the sky overnight, so here too we're looking at quite a bit of frost. So 9 o'clock in the morning, we've got the remnants of that rain. It will be turning increasingly showery. Across the south, generally, there's a fair bit of cloud, which could produce some drizzle here and there, but some brighter breaks starting to develop in the southwest. Now, it's a cold start to the day with some fog patches across Wales, but we'll see some sunshine, some dense fog patches around Liverpool, Manchester, for example, and other parts of the northwest of England currently. And as we head into Northern Ireland, here too, it's a cold and a frosty start to the day with some patchy fog. Still some rain affecting the far north of Scotland. The wind here starting to ease. The rest of Scotland mostly dry, but again, it's going to be cold and frosty with some fog in the south. And the northeast of England also seeing some sunshine when any fog patches lift. So, cold start to the day sums it up quite nicely. But where we've had the breaks does mean we'll see some sunshine when the fog lifts, but some of the fog will be slow to clear. And behind the rain, we'll hang on to a wee bit more cloud across southern counties generally. Now, today's going to feel colder for most of us compared to how it felt yesterday. As we head on through the evening and overnight, high pressure starts to take charge of our weather. Things really settle down. It's going to be a fairly quiet night. But once again, we're looking at a widespread frost and also some patchy fog forming. Perhaps a bit more cloud across the south will prevent the frost, but we just need a few breaks in the temperature to drop, and here too we'll see that as well. So we start off tomorrow with the fog. Some of that will lift, some of it will be slow to clear. Tomorrow generally there's going to be a lot of cloud around with 1 or 2 brighter breaks, some showers in the east, a little bit of drizzle at times in the southeast, but we also have a new weather front coming our way. That's going to introduce some rain as it very slowly moves towards Wales and also the Midlands. But that will be later on in the day. But worth mentioning, currently in the forecast on Sunday, for eastern areas, we could see a touch of snow. Nothing substantial, we don't think, at this stage, but it will be in the forecast for eastern coastal counties, Billy and Susanna.
So not a touch of frost, a touch of snow. All right.
Carol, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, let's turn our attention to the changing face of our high streets in Britain. 1 shop in 10 stands empty, and many high streets are undergoing radical change.
So it's a town's nighttime economy that can bring in important business. Steph is in Bournemouth, finding out what it's like. Oh, and she's preparing breakfast. Morning.
Good morning. As if they would let me anywhere near the food. No, Richard's doing a stellar job this morning, getting everyone's breakfast ready here at the Cumberland Hotel in Bournemouth. Now, you know, I've been looking at the high street all week and what we can do to get things revived on that and help shoppers and bring in more money to local towns. Well, in this area, I'm looking at the nighttime economy and how much that can help a high street, because it's worth around £66 billion to the UK economy and employs just under 10% of the UK workforce. So what do the locals think about this emphasis on the nighttime economy? I went to ask them.
We are in Bournemouth, Valentino restaurant. I've been here 23 years.
Have you seen much change in that time?
Not really, no, it's the same.
Do you think that it does better this area on an evening rather than...
Yes, oh yeah, definitely. Lunchtime trade, we haven't got it. Very, very few. Evenings, much, much better.
How often do you get, obviously...
Well, I used to live in Essex and I've moved to Bournemouth and I just love it here. And I think in the past people used to look at it as a place where people used to go to retire. But from my point of view, to me it seems quite upcoming. Now it's going from like a quiet town to a town that's well known for its nightclubs and things. So maybe if it carries on like that, it could start putting more families off coming. But at the moment, I think you've got a little bit for everybody, but I just hope it stays like that.
How have you seen it change over the last few years?
There's a lot of closed shops in Bournemouth. In the evenings, there are a lot of bars around, and I think it does put off some people coming into the centre of Bournemouth in the evenings.
So that's what some of the locals in Bournemouth think. Well, I've been asking for your thoughts on this as well. Do get in touch. It's BBC Breakfast at bbc.co.uk or at Steph Breakfast. You can tweet me. A couple of them in. We've got Lee, who says anything that helps the high street, even if it's bars, has got to be a good thing. Mohammed says that actually the night culture with binge drinking, police cars and bad behaviour makes it a no-go for families. Whereas Bob says, well, in Worthing, the nighttime economy is an essential part of their economy and the council plays an important role with responsible licensing. distancing. So do get in touch if you've got any thoughts on whether the focus on the high street should be more on the nightlife. But for now, back to you.
All right, Steph, thanks very much indeed. Steph, reporting from Bournemouth this morning.
Yeah, from the nighttime economy to the daytime economy of schools. Competition for jobs among school leavers has never been tougher, so the challenge for schools to prepare them for working life is more important than ever.
Yes, in the latest of our series looking at schools who push the boundaries, Tim Muffet has been to a college in Leicestershire where they are already putting their students to work 9 to 5. Morning, Tim. So they're doing a kind of work day instead of a school day.
Yes, good morning to you. Well, we've heard many employers, haven't we, say that academic qualifications are all very well, but what they want to see in school leavers is practical experience, the kind of preparation, if you like, for working life. So as part of our look this week at the way some schools are adapting their teaching methods, I've been to one school in Leicestershire to see their approach.
OK, your 5 minutes starts now.
What, ultimately, is the point of school?
So what we're looking at today is recruitment advertising.
Learning, of course. But to what end? Well, at the Midland Studio College in Leicestershire, the aim is clear. Preparing pupils early for the realities of working life.
As well in industry.
Very different to a traditional school. We do a 9:15 till 5 o'clock day, so the young people are with us in a normal business type day. We don't have a school uniform, we have a dress code, so again, students wear business suits, again getting them ready for the world of work. There's a range of different skills that employers are telling us that are missing in the new workforce for the future.
Traditional academic qualifications are one vital aspect of education. But what about so-called softer skills? Time management, communication, professionalism? Well, the view here is that they are just as important.
Excellent, do take a seat.
There are no form teachers here, but personal coaching sessions instead.
So it might be an opportunity there to use your applied thinking and problem-solving skills.
Pupils are encouraged to structure their day themselves.
They can work as a community to manage their time and make sure that they meet the deadlines for their GCSEs and so on that they need to meet.
If they don't manage their time properly in here, they've got more homework.
Absolutely.
Because most businesses work from 9 till 5, I think it's good because we get used to it.
I think it's an advantage for most of us when we actually do go out and get jobs that will be above and experienced in it already.
We have to kind of graduate the displacement as we go.
And from the age of 14, all pupils must attend work placements with local employers during school time.
We really want to see a smooth transition for youngsters to become from learners in college through to their world of employment. We don't want it to be too big a jump for them.
Is it frustrating as an employer to see some school children coming through without having had this kind of exposure and experience?
Yeah, it is frustrating, but I do think we've got a role to play in that. The more partnerships we can get between employment and education, the better.
You've got a whole lifetime to work, haven't you? When you're at school, isn't it important to do school stuff rather than trying to blur that into a working environment?
No, it's a lot of life skills, isn't it? So it's better to start early.
Companies like Rolls-Royce, Jaguar Land Rover, these are all pushing high technology machinery, and we need to get people trained up to that level. So without this sort of thing going on, they're not going to get it.
They're more useful than maybe a geography lesson, for example?
Well, to me, yeah, I would think it's more useful than a geography lesson.
Many would argue work can wait, that school should be something separate and different, but not here, where the 9 to 5 begins at 14.
Well, a good idea, or is not everyone happy?
Well, not everyone is happy. I mean, some teachers' unions are very unhappy about this system. There are around 15 studio schools, as they're known, like the one we saw there, more due to open. The NUT says it's overcomplicating the education process. This is not what children aged 14 should be doing. Another union, the Association of Teachers and Lecturers, says it's another nail in the coffin of state education. It's moving away from the principle of what schools should be doing. So many don't like them. It's popular, though. It's oversubscribed. Many think clearly is the way forward.
All right, Tim, thanks very much indeed.
27 minutes past 7, coming up later on the programme.
I saw a documentary that said thousands of people over 60 have ADHD, and I thought surely a hyperactive pensioner is a good thing.
She once worked in a job centre, but she went on to be crowned Queen of Comedy. Sarah Millican will be joining us on the sofa to tell us about her new television series.
She's got some great guests on that new show, Tim, Bill.
Hello. Time now to get the news, travel and weather where you are. You're so
It's
professional.
Bill,
You're really good
not
at that.
Tim.
Hello there, good morning. An NHS watchdog has been heavily criticised for the way it dealt with serious failings at the trust which runs hospitals in North Lancashire and South Cumbria. A committee of MPs says the Care Quality Commission's failures put patient care at risk, and it's calling for an external investigation into the way problems at the Morecambe Bay Trust were dealt with. It says the case helped to undermine public confidence in the CQC. The Commission itself says it's made improvements and will continue to do so. The MP for Manchester Withington, John Leach, was one of a number of Liberal Democrats who voted against the government last night over plans to cap benefit increases at 1% for the next 3 years. He says despite the defeat, he's hoping to secure concessions as the measure goes through Parliament.
I personally think that it's still too much, and it's going to affect a number of people who are already affected by the changes to housing benefit, the changes to council tax benefit. I think this is a step too far for some people who are some of the poorest people in the country.
A teenager was treated in hospital after being shot in the arm on Merseyside last night. Daly Road at Litherland is still cordoned off this morning. Police say the victim, who's 19, has so far refused to cooperate with officers. New plans for a zip wire at the Honister slate mine go before Lake District planners later. The National Park refused permission for a previous scheme because it was considered out of place in the remote landscape. And more than 4,000 fans turned up to watch Morecambe Town last night as the club let them watch the match for nothing. The home side beat Dagenham and Redbridge 2-1. The club let supporters in for free because of falling attendances. Fans say it was a great gesture.
It's the idea behind it, the board. Get a few here for note, and let's hope they pay up and come enjoy what they see and come along every week.
I think it's a good idea. If we can get more supporters through the turnstile, that's what it's all about.
Now time for the weather for today. Here's Sally.
Good morning. Well, it's a much colder start to the day, a drier and brighter day in prospect. However, we have got one or two stubborn fog patches, and if you're waking up to that fog this morning, it could well linger for much of the day, and the temperatures as a result will be suppressed under that fog. Elsewhere, though, a drier and brighter picture, the cloud breaking to allow some sunshine coming through, but the temperatures, of course, back to what you'd expect now for the time of year. It is January, after all. So into the evening period then, well, some clear skies again will allow for some frosty conditions, more widespread actually with that frost. Some fog patches, not quite as widespread though with the fog tonight. And your temperatures, well, dipping around about the 1 Celsius mark, so one or two places into minus figures. And this cold snap will continue with more foggy and frosty nights to come too.
Now, there is a warning of fog affecting visibility on many routes around the region this morning. This Highways Agency camera shows conditions on the M56 in Cheshire a short time ago. As you can see, visibility reduced there. Elsewhere, warnings of fog affecting motorists, particularly on the M6 in Lancashire, the M62 in Cheshire and the M60 in Greater Manchester. And in Morecambe, Regent Road's closed at the moment because of a fire in shops above some flats above some shops, rather. You can keep up to date with regular travel news on your BBC local radio station. I'll be back in half an hour. Bye-bye.
Good morning, you're watching Breakfast with Bill Turnbull and Susanna Reid.
Our main news this morning, private companies are to be given responsibility for monitoring the majority of offenders in an overhaul of the probation service for England and Wales.
Security firms and voluntary groups will manage the probation of low and medium risk offenders on a payment by results basis to try to reduce reoffending rates. The plans will mean that prisoners who've served short sentences will also be supervised on their release. Well, this morning on Breakfast, the Justice Minister, Lord McNally, said the proposals were not about balancing the books.
Of course it's not about saving money. It's about making sure that we don't have the revolving door of people reoffending. It's one of the big revolutions, and I do hope that some of those who are interested in the criminal justice system look at this as the opportunity it is.
Lord McNally. Cooler weather has brought relief for Australian fire crews as they continue to battle more than 100 wildfires across the southeast of the country. Temperatures in New South Wales have fallen by more than 10 degrees Celsius, but scorching conditions are expected to return at the weekend.
David Cameron and Nick Clegg are to publish a dossier giving details of progress made on hundreds of pledges made by the coalition government. It's expected to show that most targets have been met, but it will acknowledge that some have been missed. The new dossier is understood to be part of the coalition's mid-term review, which was unveiled by the Prime Minister and his deputy on Monday.
A man's been arrested on suspicion of murdering a church organist who was attacked in Sheffield as he went to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. Alan Greaves, who was 68, died 3 days after the assault, close to his home. A spokesman for South Yorkshire Police says there's been an excellent public response to the release of CCTV footage this week.
The Union flag will be raised over Belfast City Hall today to mark the 31st birthday of the Duchess of Cambridge. It'll be the first time the flag's been flown since the council made the decision not to raise it every day. Last night there were violent protests against that decision for the 6th day in a row.
And a sunset ceremony aboard a hot air balloon seems like a romantic idea for anyone, but for a couple in California at San Diego, it got their wedding off to a bit of a bumpy start.
An unexpected gust of wind forced the pilot to make a crash landing in a nearby garden.
You don't land once in a balloon either, you see, that's the trouble, you bounce.
Karen and Jonathan Nussie said the crash happened after they'd exchanged their vows, so they got the important bit out of the way, and luckily the couple went on to their reception following the rather rough landing.
Yeah, for rougher or smoother, richer or poorer, higher or lower. Those are the main stories. Carol will have the weather in about 10 minutes' time.
Now, 7:34, excellent result for Bradford.
Brilliant
Sally.
result for Bradford. And we've been talking about motivational music a little bit this morning, haven't we? What do you listen to when you run? Rocky. A bit like Bradford. It worked for them last night, didn't it? Bradford City's astonishing run in the League Cup continues. They're just one match away from Wembley after beating Aston Villa 3-1 in the first leg of their semi-final. The League Two side have already laid waste to Premier League clubs Arsenal and Wigan and went 2-0 up with goals from Narky Wells and Rory McArdle. Goalkeeper Matt Duke had produced a string of outstanding saves. The mood at the Valley Parade sobered when Andreas Weimann eventually found a way through for Villa. Not for long though, Colin McHugh refreshed the rip-roaring atmosphere to give the Bantams a great chance of making their first major cup final in over 100 years.
We got the message onto the lads when the whistle went that, be calm, let's not get carried away, because we don't give anything to Villa to think that we've done it already, because we haven't. But all we will say is we've got ourselves a great chance, and we're going to go to Villa Park in 2 weeks' time and really enjoy the occasion. We've enjoyed every moment of this cup run, and we said before the game, the lads, that when you're young, and these are the kind of nights you dream about.
Can I just say that Bill didn't actually get what Susanna was singing then? It was in fact
Rocky.
Go on.
That's how you do it. Anyway, good luck from next time.
Yeah, exactly. Wonder if it worked tonight. Tonight, this is the turn of Chelsea and Swansea in the other semi-final. Yesterday, the Chelsea press conference was a little overshadowed by the news that Pep Guardiola will return to football next season, with the Blues owner Roman Abramovich desperate to employ the former Barcelona coach.
It's a surprise, or were you expecting this? I was surprised today when they said, Guardiola, yeah, everybody knew that Guardiola will come back after one sabbatic year, so it's not a new story, it's the same story that we had before. And really pleased because I have good relationship with Pep, so it's fine.
Are you keeping the chair warm for him?
I have very good relationship with him, and I think that it's good for football if he's coming back.
The disgraced cyclist Lance Armstrong will appear on American television next week to talk about the doping scandal that ended his career. Oprah Winfrey will interview him on a programme to be broadcast next Thursday. Armstrong was stripped of his 7 Tour de France titles and given a lifetime ban. He decided not to contest a US anti-doping agency report that accused him of helping to orchestrate the most sophisticated doping programme in the history of the sport. Last week it was reported that Armstrong was planning to confess to having taken banned substances. England's Toby Flood has been cleared to play at the start of the Six Nations. The fly-half had been cited for a dangerous tackle while playing for Leicester. The Rugby Football Union panel cleared him last night. Now, it's being reported this morning that the UK Border Agency has told former England Rugby Union international Henry Furey he can stay in Britain while the case against his possible deportation is examined. South African-born Furey's visa is no longer valid. Sale Sharks cancelled his contract after he suffered a career-ending injury playing for England. He had been living in the UK for 8 years. Former international Brian Moore says Furey should not be left in this situation.
I understand what has happened and why it's happened. What I'm saying is, in his case, and potentially other cases, that shouldn't be the case. Had he continued with his employment, he would still have a visa, he could still stay here. He's got a child who was born here. The important thing is he got injured playing for his country. He was asked to play. He's got the injury which now terminates his contract, which now sends him home, which seems totally invidious to me.
Top seed Stephen "The Bullet" Bunting has been knocked out of the BDO World Darts Championships in Frimley Green. 6th seed Daryl "The Dazzler" Fitton won 3 sets in a row to win the second round match 4-2 and progress to the quarterfinals. That's all you sport.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for recognising my music.
I recognised it straight away. Surely the
3 random
most
notes.
recognisable 3 notes.
In motivational sports music?
Yeah.
Yes.
22 minutes to 8. They've been called Britain's hidden addiction. Millions of sleeping pills prescribed every year. Some doctors concerned that too many people now have become dependent on them.
Yes, the British Medical Association and the Department for Health are now going to look at how drugs for anxiety and insomnia are handed out.
Well, we'll discuss this with a GP and one man who's addicted to tranquilizers for years in just a moment. First, here are some of the figures.
Well, more than 15 million sleeping pill prescriptions were handed out in the year ending 2011. That's 500,000 more than 3 years earlier.
30% of people questioned in a recent survey, nearly a third, said they had taken sleeping pills for more than a month without getting advice.
And an estimated 1.5 million individuals in the UK are thought to be addicted to tranquilizers or sedatives.
Well, with us now, Barry Haslam, who's addicted to tranquilizers for 10 years and runs a support group for addicts, and GP Dr. Aaron Ghosh. Morning, Aaron. Morning, Barry. You lost 10 years of your life, you say?
I did, yes. I was placed on the drugs when I was 32. And then, I get to the age of 42 and I've got no memory whatsoever.
And this was for stress at work?
I had a breakdown studying for accountancy and also did 2 jobs down at the same time, and I just crashed and unfortunately got put on these drugs and slippery slope, and 10 years later I've found myself struggling to come off these drugs.
Dr. Aaron Ghosh, how long are these tranquilizer sleeping pills supposed to be prescribed for?
We know now you should only prescribe them for a very short period of time. Unfortunately, 10, 15, even 20 years ago, we probably prescribed them far more readily and for longer periods than now, where the evidence shows that what we should do. If anyone's on this medication